Good evening, everybody. I would like to call to order the Manlius Town Board meeting on November 15th, 2023 at roughly 6:30 p.m. As always, we are remote and hybrid, so you can always join us via Zoom to take part in the meeting itself. And we stream to Facebook, YouTube, and to our website. Instructions to join us on Zoom are at the top of each of our agendas. So with that, I will ask Councilor Italiano.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so just a couple of things. We're gonna try to throw more of these updates and notifications at the top of the meeting before everyone goes home. Upcoming, Gulf Road will be closing, as well as on-street parking will be prohibited from November 1st to April 15th. So please remind your neighbors about that. Also, our December meetings are not the normal second and fourth Wednesdays. They will be the first and third. So that's December 6th and December 20th. We did that due to the holidays, moving those up so that there was less competition. And then we are also going to be posting shortly on the website a number of openings that will be coming up next year for the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, and Board of Assessment Review. We ask the folks that are interested in joining those boards look to the website for the application, or you can always just send over a resume in an email to let us know that you're interested. And we'll be scheduling interviews for those in a few weeks once we've had some time to take in all the applications that are available. Okay, so next up, we have Town Assessor Patrick Duffy who gives what? Open podium. I skipped right over it. Okay, so first up for open podium, we have Craig Duzak to talk about assessment. And then if anybody is here via Zoom, if you're interested in speaking at open podium, I use the raise hand function.
I'm using Manlius tonight. My name is Ishka Bibble. Well, because the assessor might find my house and find my comments relevant and say, hey, I gotta look at this place. So my name is Craig Duzak, and I'll start with the observation that the first word a child learns is probably mama, and then maybe later daddy. And then once the child has siblings, the word the child learns is fair. It's not fair. I guess that's a pretext for talking about assessment. It's really more questions. And I asked having lived in both a village in Manlius and now outside the village in Fayetteville, and the questions that I hope Mr. Duffy will address, and perhaps some of them are also relevant to the board membership, has to do with the way assessments are done. So I live in Changing Seasons. Changing Seasons had a average assessment of 14.5% last year. You can correct me if I'm mistaken, but
You're about right.
oh, good. I wish I were wrong and it were somewhat lower. And it gives rise to several of the questions. Now, I've lived here long enough to understand that an increase in assessments does not mean your taxes go up by that comparable amount. The various taxing agencies set their budgets and then the tax may go up. But one thing it lends itself to is, as we've seen as recently as this last election, any number of candidates will talk about how they lowered the tax rate, which is pretty meaningless because the amount of dollars that comes out of your pocket usually doesn't stay the same or go down. It's usually in the other direction. So the 14.5%, the neighborhood has a variety of dwellings, all of which are either 3 or 4, or perhaps some 5-bedroom home. There may be some that have 2 baths, 2.5 baths, 3, and variation, fireplaces. Some will have walkouts, some will not. So when you apply a 14.5 rate across the board, the question that comes to mind is, why was the property maybe 2 or 3 sold in the neighborhood? Maybe that was the basis for saying, well, that was the average increase in the assessments. But maybe only the houses that sold were at the higher end of the scale, and so that's where the 14.5 came from. So it seems to me that when you're doing this kind of gross assessment across the board, I'll use the analogy of you have a yacht and I have a dinghy, raise our taxes both by 15%. I'm not sure that the value of the two vessels is equivalent to do that. So that's the first comment. I've only grieved my assessment once, many years ago. And it was after we had refinanced our mortgage. Now, I don't think folks are doing that today because the direction of mortgages is going up. Oh, you forgot to set it, so I get another 3. So we had our house reappraised. We took that in as evidence for the assessor's office. I don't know if you were the assessor then, but we did get a correction, but somehow our value was still higher in the assessor's eyes than the bank thought, which struck me as peculiar. And I'm sure any of you who have ever had a distinction between an appraisal and an assessment, especially, you know, this market is crazy. I know it's probably all going to go up, but it seems to me that the basis for having a differential between those two is never clearly explained. The third thing I want to say is I've always asked this question. I've asked it of Supervisor Deere. We have annual assessments. If everybody who was taxed lived in the same taxing situation where there are annual assessments, there would be equity in the way in which units were treated. But as you know, we have school districts that are split between different towns, some of which may or may not do the annualized assessments. So do we put our property owners at a disadvantage because every year our assessments are done on its full value, whereas the district next door is less? And of course, when we're only talking about school districts, there's probably an easier way to equalize that. We're talking across the entire county where those differentials occur, then the taxing burden falls disproportionately on a town like this. I've heard the supervisor say, you know, he defends this idea, but the question is, how do assessors among and between themselves find this equalization? You know, the state may have an equalization rate or whatever, but that always seems to be a lagging thing. Finally, last question.
Just, you are about 5 minutes in.
Oh, I was just clearing my throat.
Just wrap it up real.
I will. Has to do with the differential in rates between town and village taxes. So when we lived in the village of Manlius, we were always concerned that we were paying, in effect, double. I know the town has what A and B, the different tax rates, but it always seemed to me that there were things that would come up in the budget that seemed to extend that. So for example, the fire department goes over budget and suddenly, where's that money coming from? So how's the equalization done between comparable properties in the village, whether it's in Minoa, Manlius, Fayetteville, and outside in the town? Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you so much.
Next up, we have Bill Gray, talk about Garden Park.
My name is Bill Gray, but I guess that's already been announced. The Garden Park project is now a highly urbanized project that is equivalent to R7 or R8 zoning. It may well be a valuable project for the town's moving forward mood. If so, you should work with the developer to find it a proper site that has multiple modes of transportation available, is sited on an arterial or arterial collector that has the traffic capacity, and adjacent commercial and recreational facilities that correspond with such a dense residential use. No planner would tell you that an R7 land use should be sited where it's surrounded by fully developed R1 and RA land use. The project would be at home in the university area in Ithaca's college town, but not near Lemoyne because it would not be compatible with the neighborhood or the zoning. Your newly adopted comprehensive plan spends a lot of time looking forward at the anticipated impacts and needs of Onondaga County and what it expects over the next 5 to 10 years. It also emphasizes that you need to take care and be fair with the existing residents so that pride of place will grow rather than diminish. Any municipal planning and development officer will tell you that you first take care of your existing businesses and residents before going after new development. Without that, the community may grow, but its cohesiveness will fade. This project does not belong at the proposed site and would overpower the surrounding residents. Last week, I gave you a list of 9 reasons. I believe this is the 10th. The way you know this project doesn't belong here is that if you cannot picture the 700-foot long, 50-foot wide, and 4-story high building with 156 parking places across the street from your home, behind your home, or across from your parents' home, then you shouldn't picture it across the street from our homes. If this proposed development is your picture of moving forward, then find it a site that gives it all the advantages and requirements that your new comprehensive plan and smart growth policy call for. For all the same reasons that the Village of Fayetteville just denied a similar project that was better sited on Route 5, and this project should be denied the requested zone change. If you're worried about the site itself, Mother Nature's done a good job reclaiming it. If you can't help yourself and feel that it needs to be filled, then the developer can build the original garden park project for which the CA zoning was granted. Thank you.
Next up, Eric Downey, talking about garden park.
Yeah, I'm Eric Downey. I live at 5144 Hybrid Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak here and the couple of meetings we've had or hearings about this project. So my concerns are going to, well, I wanted to start by saying I wanted to speak tonight in the event that that would help me in the future, because I know this is the last opportunity that we've got to publicly express concerns. So, you know, that was one of the reasons that I spoke tonight, if that helps me in the future. If I do want to approach the board again, given the fact that there's no more hearings. But so the concerns I have are, I brought some illustrations, I'll leave them on the table at the door. So just having lived, you know, there pretty much not as directly across the street as my neighbors are, but yeah, right across the street from Brookdale. So I'm noticing that, well, in the previous meetings, I noticed there was discussion about traffic studies. So I would like to know the number of deliveries that are going to be expected on an average day. And the other one was that the road isn't really adequate in terms of the traffic instruments, and with the road as it is now, it's not sufficient. It's an insufficient road for the amount of traffic. I think that the people that use it are used to it enough that they overcome a lot of that. Like, even though they don't really obey the speed limit, but you know, they do manage to pay attention to school buses, and if there's deliveries, people are pretty understanding. But yeah, so it's just going to be a real sore spot, that intersection at the exit, traffic wise. So that kind of leads into one of my other ones. My last comment actually was that Brookdale itself, the way it's designed, and I'm an architect, so it comes from that standpoint. The types of windows on Brookdale do not create glare, sun glare for our house, and they do not create sun glare for the roadway. So those types of windows should be looked at for, you know, that benefit. Because I'm concerned about that. I already mentioned delivery, so I'll leave the photos. The one about the traffic sufficiency is the speed limit sign. Looks like it might be older than me, but it's in bad shape. And the other one was the glare aspect off the cars. Well, I'm going off the cars in Brookdale because that's where we get glare from. So not the windows. The building is situated and designed such that it's not an issue. So I'd like to see that maintained. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just a point of fact, there will be additional hearings if this goes forward with the planning board, so
Sure.
you will have future opportunities.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, especially with the zone change as far as deliveries. That's gonna be something that's going to be impacting us. And I'm glad you mentioned that because I did give some consideration beforehand, although I decided not to mention it. That because the logistics plans will work it out, but there really is no place to stage. There's gonna be a lot of construction delivery, there's gonna be a lot. I was just up picking my daughter to high school and these trucks come in groups of 3 or 4. And they take over. And that's gonna happen here. And we have no breathing room as it is. So that's just a thought. And I don't know where they're gonna put to actually situate something that's gonna be able to lift everything I'm at a loss to see where that's gonna happen anyway. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question about the drawings. You can ask later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next up, I think I have a Michael Downey. Kyle Downey.
I could if you want, I think I signed the wrong list, I'm also, may I? Thank you very much. Peter Ricardo, 5138 Hybrid Street, directly across from the driveway of Brookdale. Been a resident for just under 30 years, contributing to this community. I will be retiring at the end of December, and it's kind of crushing to have this be something that I have to consider now after building my home in this community for 28 years. Obviously not happy about it, but I just we're all very busy to organize my thoughts. I'm just looking at your narrative and some issues. You use language like allowing for a more creative development, but creative for who? Creative for the developer, perhaps. Because these things aren't possible under the standard residential zoning. Standards are there for a reason. I think standard is what we want. Let's look at that. Enhance and complement our immediate neighbors. This certainly does not enhance my home. Understand that I looked a little bit ahead. You have a driveway going to 3 lanes with 2 egress. So instead of 1 set of headlights going directly through our house and our living room, we're gonna have 2 now. Not enhancing whatsoever. Compatible with the community without adding any material impact on local traffic. I mean, this is creative writing. I swear. Fiction novel, maybe. Convenience item store as part of the added benefit. In other words, more deliveries. You got food service deliveries. If there's a food service plan, I don't know that, but there's going to be deliveries. How much shopping do people do now on Amazon and FedEx? It's already, I don't know if you can go down the street on any day and not have to stop, 4-way flashers, go around. Please, there's going to be so much more traffic. Walking trails connect to Brookdale. What walking trails? Through snow storage, storm swales, parking areas? Where's a walking trail in the space? Essential transportation to medical offices maybe, but restaurants, retail, you know, again, buses, shuttles, Uber, the amount of traffic, how can that be insignificant? Decks and rooftop terraces, let's party. Let's have a polka band every Thursday night outside on the roof. That will enhance the community. I'm stunned. Blah, 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 highway and for interior streets shall be approved by the town highway superintendent. Is that just a poor choice of words? Shall be approved, but it's like, shall be done? What is that? I don't understand that. Perhaps my favorite. Reduce the number of workforce housing units required for method calculating the rent ceiling to be considered workforce housing if such an adjustment is necessary to support the continued financial viability of the project. Wouldn't I like that opportunity? I'm not making enough money, let's change the rules. Unbelievable. Couple of more things, but I think you get my point. The only other thing I would say is that given a recent election, I'm not a statistics guy, but you may look at it as a 55% plus or minus success, but to me, it's a 45% disappointment. A lot of people in this community were not happy. So I do appreciate your service. It's a thankless job.
I don't know if I have a lot to add. Obviously, a lot of us are very emotional about this, so I'm here to get my emotions out. Take your time, it's gonna be a long-term engagement here, if this thing is gonna go on. You sent a letter in June and said for 10,000 feet for the people that resident in 10,000 feet from that place, 1,000 feet, sorry, yeah. And you called it the hybrid street project or the hybrid street zoning. I don't know if the zone is changing for the whole street. I think it's affecting well beyond the 1,000 feet. It's affecting Manlius and Fayetteville. This is a main road taking traffic back and forth. The traffic is gonna grow. I've lived on that road for 25 years, planning on staying there for another 25. So, as Peter said, our lifelong investments and our retirement is on that to be on that property. You're taking it away from us. I understand the financial benefits from this. Financial benefits for the town. But I think you were elected here for the people and listen to us. But as Bill said, it's obviously not in your front yard and not in front of your parents or in front of your house. It's in front of ours. We don't get the feeling that there is understanding of what's happening now. This is going to be maybe politically gaining for you. You think that it's going to be built there and you have a political gain of putting a dorm down, a circus dorm or downtown building in our neighborhood, in the middle of our neighborhood, but it's gonna be a sore for the next 25 years. Every time we're gonna pass by, traffic is gonna grow. I want to maybe take this time, I don't know if you guys are allowed to talk, but maybe you can tell us, William, Lisa, John, can you tell us how is it benefiting the people? The neighborhoods around us? Is there a chance to hear any of that?
I just want to say that I have an interesting perspective, I think, on this because I grew up and lived during high school in the house right across the street from where Brookdale is now, and so all of the houses that were being built and the first parade of homes or whatever, that was all happening while I was living there. And I lived there when the quarry was not reclaimed at all, where the trees didn't exist. It was a pit. So I lived there during that period of time. for 4 years. And so I do have a sense of what it was like to physically live there in all seasons. And the traffic, I'm sure, has increased between that time to now. So I want you to know that there have been other projects since I've been elected that I have been very clear to understand how they did not align and fit. The apartments next to Megnan Farms made a lot of sense. The solar project, solar on the landfill, even though it was right near neighbors, did make sense to me. And so I hope that you don't collapse the idea of what we all do when we consider these projects into thinking that we're all for development or all against development. We really do have consideration. So I would say that you know that you have perspective of someone who's physically lived across the street from the area at one point in time. And also the belief in the idea of smart growth being about more density, this kind of project, taking into account the experience that someone like Mr. Gray has, hearing all of that, but also not agreeing with some things. And asking us, being in the position where we have to stretch and put the right checks and balances in place and address the concerns we have, but also not take on every bit of fear. Not take on every bit of fear that you have. That's what I've learned in the last 4 years, that I can't speak to how you actually feel and the nervousness you have about things you've seen, but the projecting out exactly what will happen and what kind of negative thing will happen is something that we need to weigh and we have to put data behind. So being accountable for the traffic study and what happens traffic wise, the access and safety issues, the safety of the site, all those things are just examples of things that I would be very, I'm
The
very
monstrous
conscious
size of it,
of. Sorry.
the monstrance, how big and huge it is in the middle of the neighborhood, is that something you consider too? Like, can you envision it if you lived across the street?
Yes.
Because I live across the street in a restored barn from the 1800s. All right, I'm just, and thank you, I just want to say something. Anyone else would like to share with me how is it gonna benefit?
I
Yes,
think would be very beneficial for the community because we need places for our aging population to be going to. We don't have very many one-level properties for them to go to when there's going to be properties like that in there. I also think it's a very good benefit for Brookdale to have the opportunity for apartments that are gonna be potentially furnished for their family members that have relatives in Brookdale to go and be able to have a place to be. And if he's finished speaking.
yeah,
Thank you. Having Alzheimer's is a very difficult disease. It's a very expensive disease. Having a facility right next door to that for family members to be able to be in and be able to go and visit their family members right there, I think that is a very big benefit for them. Also, like I said, for the elderly population to be right there, it's great. And as far as having this apartment complex right across the street from you, since I've been on this board, I have approved 2 zone changes for apartments to be built, and zone changes for apartments to be built right across the street from me and up the street from me. So I do understand, and they might not have totaled up to 78 apartments, but I have approved them to happen right across the street from me, because we do need to have more housing in our town like that. So I understand where you're coming from, and I hear what everybody is saying. And Garden Park, the developers, they've heard what you all have been saying too, and they have redone their drawings and their designs as countless times out at this point to try to adapt and adjust things and work on screening of homes for you guys, so the headlights don't shine into your windows directly as the cars are pulling out, and try to accommodate and work with us, with the town, as well as our residents, to try to accommodate. So it's not just a political move for us to say, oh yeah, let's get all this development in, here we go, and if it's gonna look good for us. We're not trying to make the town of Manlius into what downtown Syracuse is. It's a benefit for us to be able to have these types of things, so that, because the more housing we have, the more supply we have, the less, the more demand goes down. Or it's the more housing costs can also go down too. Is where I'm
thank you for sharing that. Because the way we see this, Garden Park is lies and deception. When they tell you senior apartments, there's no one there to check if it's a senior apartment. It's
right
too,
there,
all right.
right there.
I want to see people sell their house. This is going to be an upgrade for someone that this apartment costs as much as their house, apparently. And all right. that district, just let me give me a moment here. We specially designed this district plan to enhance and complement our immediate neighbors as well as the surrounding areas. This document continue to come up with all kind of an imaginary things that do not complement any of my any neighbors in the community. The salon, they have a barber salon there. I looked at their website. They don't need your salon. Convenient item stores. Seriously, there's a little shelf is now counting as a store inside this place. Underground parking, which it's just blows my mind and how much it's gonna cost for people to pay for that. Outdoor kitchen, is that for us too? What is this outdoor kitchen, this park, this little thing there with a bench? Walking trails from Brookdale and back. This is the walking trail, 60 feet away. Wellness center and media room, they have their own computers there. I don't even understand if it's a resident old people home or is it just apartments? And then there's an Airbnb for people that will try to go and cannot rent an apartment down the street. Transportation, now we have shuttles going down, up and down. What is the transportation shuttles? And let me, I don't know if you've seen here, if there is a deck for parties there and rooftop terrace. This is all, and then they call it 3.5 stories. When we know it's a 5 stories building now, it's just growing, this thing. Overgrown, and also sidewalks and trails will be connecting to other neighborhood places. There's only a trail there to Brookdale. I live in front of Brookdale for 25 years now. Barely any people coming. They can rent a room in the hotel. What are you selling us this bull about apartments for the people in Brookdale for their families? Thank you.
Thank you.
And you know what? Fayetteville is becoming Brookdale.
Okay, next up, Janine, Noel, Paul.
Yes. Hi. I'm here to talk about Jarvis Drive, as always. I have enough to get the pictures to.
You can pass them around, thank you.
You can keep going.
Okay, great.
Okay, so for years, we've been talking to the town about paving our road. And the condition is horrific. They paved the road and then they served it with micro surface instead of tarring the road. I called and complained about it. You can see it's all cracked. The stones are coming through. It's in pretty poor condition after they finished resurfacing. I consulted with a manager from the Syracuse City, who's a friend of mine, and that actually does this kind of thing. And I asked him about the micro surfacing, and he said it's kind of like a cheap way of servicing the ground instead of actually milling and repaving. I have a dear friend on Mallard Landing. So when I was up there, I was looking at their street, they had just been repaved. And then I called the town about it. And she told me that, well, you don't pay the taxes they pay. So that aside, that doesn't matter. Yeah, I already talked to the mayor about that. So that's already aside.
Oh.
As you can see from the pictures, it's worse off than before before they scraped the road and paved it. So what could we do to get this road fixed?
So I think I'm misunderstanding, is it that, because this is in the village, I believe,
Mhm,
right?
it is.
So did we know if they subcontracted out us to do the payment?
They did not.
So this is completely out of our purview, it would be the village of Manlius that you have to go to.
Okay. Do I also talk to them about snow plowing?
Yes, so
Okay.
you can email Mayor Worrell directly, I would say, and with a concern, and you can let him know that you went to us and we encouraged you to check in. with him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does Brad Hunt sit on this board or not?
He's the attorney for the.
For the, okay, so I'm in the wrong place.
Is it-
I'll take my picture.
Okay, you better take that.
Well, that's okay.
I was like, this doesn't look like a round special.
Glad you did that.
I was there. I love the highway department know that you appreciated the paving and that was nice.
Yeah.
They did do that.
Thank you.
So next up, it's hard to make out the first name, last name looks like Root. We have G Root. Is anyone else here who was planning on speaking for Garden Park?
Oh, you're online, John.
Yeah.
You put me on the list?
She's with us.
Yeah, so, so then, we will go with, having trouble reading the names, it looks like Lovely Hamlet.
Hamlet. I'll do that.
So if you want to promote the first person?
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Hi, thank you so much. Yes, thank you for giving me this time to speak. Really quick, I do want to echo my neighbors concerned about the garden park development because I also cannot understand how this space was ever chosen as ideal. But so yeah, thank you. My name is Lovely Hamlet and I represent Java Sprouts Farms in North Collins, New York. We are licensed adult use conditional cultivators, OCM license number 218. And I want to talk briefly about the agenda item number 8 coming up, the local law amending RT zoning for cannabis in the definition sections of the town code. I really do hope that Fayetteville decides to allow cannabis growers showcases in the community. I am a Hybrid Street resident. I'm 30 seconds from Target. It's why I moved there. You know, my parents are both graduated from FM. My surviving 95-year-old grandmother is still on Henneberry Road. And I grew up in Pompey, so I knew that I always loved coming to Fayetteville because it was the center of commerce. Yeah, PNC, Kohl's, Joann's. This is where my family got our essentials without having to go to downtown Syracuse. So I want to remind the community that Fayetteville Manlius is the bridge to rural areas east of Syracuse. Currently, the only place to get legal cannabis inside of Syracuse is in Flintstone downtown. So really, to allow these showcases is not about just opening access within Fayetteville, but serving these larger communities around us by making Fayetteville their access point. And we obviously have incredible opportunity to do that with the number, already the center of commerce that we have in Town Plaza, but we have an immense amount of traffic that we can capitalize so that consumers can actually stop in Fayetteville on their way home, as they may already be doing, and, get what they need safely and securely. So in this way, we have the community also has the ability to control the time and place and manner of sales operations. We can make sure that we are providing to customers that are 21 and up with the best brands, including mine, and the most accurate education. I also want to say that as a cultivator, I cannot sell direct to customers. Obviously, that has to go through a licensed dispensary. And so these showcases have been instrumental in allowing cultivators to also be able to interact directly with our communities. We can educate them and we can also respond to them and their needs, which helps us better serve the community and grow the products that make the most impact on their lives. So when I was given the opportunity to partner with Java Sprouts, this was making my dreams come true. And there's a lot of people who I would love to bring that back to my community with in this area. But I also know that there are many residents of Fayetteville who want to hear the stories of small businesses and the farmers who have been working tirelessly throughout the year to make their dreams come true, like mine. So I really do hope you allow this opportunity, not just in terms of the revenue that can be gained from this enterprise, but also just showing that Fayetteville has a great opportunity to become this access point and really make the best impression on what legal cannabis is in New York State. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then it looks like last up, we have Margaret Moldy. Are you there, Margaret?
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. This is Margaret Mulvey. I'd like to just add a couple of comments to some of my neighbors in regards to the garden park proposed plan.
Thank you.
In that, I would like to echo the question stated to you by McCall Downey as to what kinds of discussions or possibilities have been ideated by this town as to what housing are we looking to build? Does it have to be such a dense and large installation in such a small spot. You're talking town of Manlius where there are other properties that are sitting idle. Nothing on them. Why does all of it have to be stuffed into such a small piece of property when there are other properties and other locations for these people to find homes and places where there are amenities, there is transportation? It just doesn't make sense to us as residents reading your comprehensive plan and seeing that there's stated numerous times where it is important to ask of your residents what they would prefer. And we are stating to you now what you are proposing is outrageous in its size and location. Are you listening to us? Are you considering what is good for our residents as well as what we hope to build for the future people to live in? I'm not hearing that. I am not hearing that. I see you guys bulldozing over everything that we state to you that is in the comprehensive plan is what you want and what you're proposing to do in the future. The future is here now. And you are not adhering to those goals, objectives, and things that you can do. Shake your head. I don't care, but you're not listening. You have made up your minds. You have a developer who wants to build something on this property and is using this opportunity now to just ruin this part of your town. I think that if you thought about this and said, how could we build smart and allow more properties to produce this housing where people can actually enjoy a life in an apartment where they are not isolated, where they're not on a street where it's dangerous for them to actually exit and get off of their property. What I saw in that write-up was something describing where people are going to live, where you're expecting people to be either immobilized in wheelchairs, not requiring to go anywhere but on some silly sidewalk to the Brookdale community. There's a whole big community all around that. And 55 and older does not mean you are in a wheelchair or that you can't get off the property other than walking the 100 yards to the next door institution. There are people out there that want to jog, they want to walk, they want to bicycle, they want to do all kinds of stuff. I don't see that in this institution that you want to build across from our houses. You're not listening. And I don't think you're ideating at all. You're just snatching up the first opportunity and stuffing it into this little 5-acre property when there's so many other properties around this town that you could do much better for not just the people that live there, but for the communities around them. You're not listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else for voting?
Promise I'll be brief. Tom Bassett, town resident, Barbary Lane, retired real estate lawyer. Came to the podium during the public hearing for this project, and I won't reprise what I said in support. I said I was a devil's advocate. I guess I still am. But the one thing I wanted to mention was that it sounds as if the opponents some think this is residentially zoned. I mean, they don't contend that. One person seemed to contend that. And that what is being sought is a change of zone to a more problematic category of use. In actuality, the area is zoned commercial. And so the way I see it, if the zone change is granted, it will create a more restrictive zone for the property. And if it's not granted, and some developer comes along and proposes a strip mall, some other use that is allowable under the commercial zoning, you could end up with a project occupying that site far more objectionable to the neighbors and to anyone else than what is proposed by this developer. So so I still favor this zone change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? For open voting?
Has anybody read the
Sir,
resolution?
it's not a conversation back and forth, it's open voting, you have your opportunity. We've had many conversations, so is there anyone new who would like to speak for open voting?
Yes.
May I speak again?
No, you've had your opportunity and we're already 45, 50 minutes into open voting. We had a public hearing that was open for, I wanna say two different meetings. I think one of them sat for about an hour and a half and listened to comments, so pretty satisfied with the comments we've heard. And there'll be an update later in the meeting when we have a presentation from the developers. Okay, moving on. Assessment presentation from town assessor Patrick W.
What are all the rocks there? Nothing's gonna happen to them, just gonna leave it?
I'm sorry, that's not, you're out of
It's
order.
not part of it?
I'm sorry, you're out of order. You're about to hit the gavel, I'm sorry.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna sit here and talk through, so I'm not turning my back to the people.
I have a gift for you.
Now you have to hear me as well as see me, okay? This is just a quick review. Well, it's not so quick, but I'm gonna pare it down as much as I can. I looked at the agenda, I cut it down already, and so for the sake of brevity, I'm gonna cut it down even more here. This is how it all started, this meeting tonight. William shot me an email and said, would you mind going and addressing these issues here? And on the short, just in case you can't go and read this, here's what it looks like condensed. This is what William asked me to go and address. And so with no further ado, assessments are determined in accordance with real property tax law, section 305, where the assessments must be determined annually at a uniform percentage of value, which does allow for fractional assessment, but I'm going to address a question that I had about that. One of the board members presented me a question, and I'll address that as we go through this. The valuation process, there's, for the most part, there's 3 different ways in which we can value property. One is the cost approach. This is how much does it cost to build a structure? If it's not new, subtract out depreciation, add in the value of the land. This is something that you're most common, likely to go and see from your insurance company. They look at it, well, Tom, you know, from your insurance company and your fire out there, pretty disastrous. But this is what they were valuing or insuring Tom's house at before the fire, was to make sure that everything was covered.
We have a relationship.
Yeah, yes, we do. Yeah, it was a nice little fire there too. Second approach that I use for valuing properties is the market approach. This is taking a look at properties that have sold, dissect it, find out what it was that someone paid $300,000 for, pick it apart, find the individual components, and then go and compare the properties that haven't sold to those that have sold and making the adjustments for differences between them. This is typical. These 2 approaches here you'll find are used for both the residential properties and the commercials. An additional methodology for valuing properties is the income approach. The income approach is something that the courts, New York State courts, prefer when it comes to valuing commercial properties. It's not valuing the business, it's valuing the income of the building. How much rent can you generate? And subtract out the operating expenses and come up with a cap rate, and that will come up with the indicated value of the property. All of this has to be done within specific calendar times. Right now, we're working on the tentative assessment for May 1st of 2024, but we're using the sales up to July 1st of this year. And that's all set by law. Taxable status date is March 1st. So as of March 1st of next year, we're going to use the values from up to July 1st of this year to come up with the tentative roll that's coming out in May 1st of next year. Taxable status date simply means a couple of things. Number one, if you're entitled to an exemption and you want the exemption, you have to have your application in on or before March 1st. The other thing it means is that if you have any construction going on and you're 50% through that construction, you're going to be assessed for that new construction. It's not one of these things, well, I haven't finished putting the crown molding on, therefore you can't go and assess me. And trust me when I say that I have received that argument. But if, as I said, if it's 30, 40, 50% done on March 1st, that's how it gets assessed. As I mentioned before, the tentative roll comes out on May 1st of every year. Property owners have between May 1st and the fourth Tuesday in May to review the roll and make a determination as to whether or not you want to go and grieve it. The Board of Assessment Review will go through the better part of June doing their deliberations. And I'll talk a little bit more about the board in just a few minutes. They provide me these numbers and I have to publish a final roll on July 1st. There is another appeals process that comes later on down the line, but suffice it to say, I'm going to just leave it at that for now. So what is it that the assessments do? The assessments contribute to the tax rate. I'm the bottom line here. The town board, the county legislature, the school boards, they all come up with the budgets. I come up with the taxable value. And not everything is taxable. For example, we're in a town hall right now. It has an assessment on it, but it doesn't make any sense to go and tax the taxpayers to go and pay a tax bill for something that you already own. I forgot your name here, sir. Craig, okay. He had mentioned before about the raise in the assessments, and does it actually lead to an increase in the taxes? And the answer is no, and I'm giving you two scenarios here. If the taxable assessed value stays relatively the same and the budget increases, then the tax rate also increases. If the taxable assessed value increases and the budget stays relatively the same, then the tax rate decreases. This is a slide I didn't know exactly where to put. William had asked me to talk about special districts. We have a litany of special districts. I just thought that this was one that everyone has in common. They have fire protection, whether it's the Fayetteville, Kirkville, Manlius, or Manoa fire departments. But this is how it breaks out in terms of what the taxable value is. As I said, if you take a look at the total AV, that's the assessed value. Again, everything gets assessed, but not everything is taxable. And that's where the town taxable portion comes into play. Municipal accounts and how this breaks down. I've got the three villages in the town outside, and I broke it down in terms of agricultural, vacant, and residential and commercial properties and how many we have of those. Total count for the town right now is 14,393 parcels. This is to show you. This is off the New York State Office of Real Property Tax Services website. The town of Manlius since 1997, down at the bottom there, we've been maintaining 100% assessments, and this year was no exception. We have to go through a lot of documentation for the state to come in and certify us as being at 100%. This I thought was a little crowded, so I condensed this down. Let me go back to this. What you're looking at here are 6 hypothetical neighborhoods. And these are the taxable values for those hypothetical neighborhoods. And neighborhood number 1 here goes up by 4%, and neighborhood 2 goes up 6%, and you can read the numbers. So if you go and if we continue going with the 100%, over time, and assuming that none of the trends change, and again, this is all just hypothetical, the $1 million neighborhood at the end of 5 years would have a value of $1.2 million. Neighborhood 6, which starts off at $3.5 million, at the end of the 5-year period, and again, assuming that it's going at 14% per year, comes out to $6.7 million. If we did not do 100% reassessment, then New York State will come along and they come up with the equalization rate. And I'll talk about this in just a minute here. But what would happen here, it's a one size fits all. And we know that here in this town, there's different neighborhoods that accelerate at different different rates. And there's some neighborhoods that actually go down in value, and it all depends on what's going on. Even within commercial properties, we take a look at the commercial properties, and apartments are different from office spaces. Office spaces are becoming more of a, I'm trying to think of a clean term here, but they're becoming a liability is really what it comes down to. There's a surplus of office spaces, and I think it's only going to go and continue here. But New York State will come along and take one number, and it will be applied to farms. It'll be applied to residentials. It'll be applied to vacant lands, and it'll also be applied to the commercial properties, commercial residential vacant farms. It's a one size fits all. And even though we know that the neighborhoods within the town are changing, if you don't do the reassessment like we're doing right now, then in the end, instead of coming up with, for example, in the, there we are. Here's filtering it out. I took out some of these neighborhoods. We got neighborhoods 1, 3, and 5. Under normal circumstances, and again, assuming that the trends stay the same, at the end of 5 years, we're still at $1.2 million. But if the state comes along and imposes the equalization rate, then this property, this neighborhood here is going to have a value of 4.6 million as opposed to the 5.2. That's a net difference of minus 12.7%. Conversely, the neighborhood that started off with $1 million assessment gets slammed here because they wind up going from the 1.2 million to the 1.5 million. Therefore, in 5 years' time, they would be paying something, again, hypothetically, 26% more than what they would have if we maintain the reassessment. I talked about the equalization rate. The way the state figures it out, the state takes the sum of the assessed value, that its number, they take my number, and they go out and do their own analysis. They take a sample throughout the town, and they figure out, okay, here's Duffy says it's worth $1 million. We think it's worth $2 million. Therefore, your equalization rate is 50%. I can tell you from personal experience, trying to fight the state on the state equalization rate is mission impossible. Once they get it set, this is the way it's going to be. They make the rules, and if you want to go and appeal the equalization rate, then you appeal to the same people who made the numbers to begin with. It's like letting the chickens be guarded by the hounds. Exemptions. Currently, there's 3,009 exemptions, total exemptions in the town. A lot of these are also the school tax relief, but it's worth noting that the total value of the exemptions is $468 million. I'll just give you a rounded number. That's 11.61% of the total assessed value of the town. Put that into perspective, the most abundant exemptions out there are the seniors, the veterans, governments, government properties. New York State owns Green Lakes, the town, the villages, and the county. All of those, there's 213 properties that are exempt. We have the volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. There's 84 of those exemptions. There's 72 nonprofits. The 72 also includes 9 not-for-profit low-income housing. As far as the biggest consumers, if you will, of the exemptions, again, it's the government. Government also includes schools. So if you stop and think about all of the different schools, the high schools, you can see where we are here. Nonprofits, seniors, veterans, pretty much speaks for itself. Any questions up to this point? I'm going to skip through this. These are a list of the exemptions. These are all of the exemptions where there's at least one of them here on our tax roll within the town. This is page 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are all the exemptions that are available and being benefited. I threw this in. This is a little bit different than what it could have been. Back in 2022, there were 671 county, town, and school seniors exemption. This year, there's only 335. The reason for that is the town adopted a different level for the income for the seniors. And because of that, it wound up changing, it siphoned off some of the numbers right here, but it also included some new applicants who now met the newer, higher standards for the income, for the seniors exemption. And of course, the financial impact is pretty much self-explanatory as well. Ask me what that is. I don't know. This is the first time I'm seeing it, but that's the, it's supposed to be the sliding scale. This would be the town right here, and these are the school districts. School districts haven't adopted the new limits yet. They've been conducting public hearings on it. In fact, I've got a meeting coming up with the East Syracuse Manoa committee that's discussing this. Skipping through grievances. The appeals process, all of this is all stacked in the favor of the property owner, believe it or not. The first thing they can do is talk to the assessor, that's me. If they don't agree with me, then they can go and take it to the Board of Assessment Review. The Board of Assessment Review renders a decision. I don't have any appeal to the board. If they say change it, I gotta change it. If you're not satisfied with the Board of Assessment Review, then you can either go to the Small Claims Assessment Review or to the New York State Supreme Court. If you're a commercial property, or if you own a vacant lot that's large enough to build on by local code, you have to go to the Supreme Court. You can't go to the SCAR hearing. 3 to 5 board members on the Board of Assessment Review. I'm gonna, for the sake of brevity, I'm gonna blow through here. The board can leave the assessments alone, they can reduce the assessments, or they can determine it, the change in the assessment to be something between what the property owner says and what the assessor says, or they can strike the property from the roll. This year, there were 499 grievances filed with the Board of Assessment Review. Of the 499, 211 were reduced, 288 were no changes, and there were 9 people who scheduled a hearing that were no-shows. Of the property owners that came in to challenge their assessments, the total assessed value that was under review was the $226 million. If the property owners got everything that they had asked for, the $226 million assessments would have been reduced down to $164 million. In fact, the difference was $61 million between the the assessed values and the challenged numbers. And the Board of Assessment Review reduced the total of $6,133,611. The median assessed value that was under review was $272,000. The median owner's estimate of value was $235,000. The difference was $34,200, and the median bar reduction was $14,500 for those who did receive a reduction. This is the numbers that, again, William asked me to go and give a comparison of 2022 to 2023. Long and short of it is, for the taxable value for the town, we're looking at $3.1 million. I'm sorry, $3.1 billion. After the assessment came out and the final roll was published, the assessments went up to $3.5 billion. That was an increase of $382 million, or a 12% increase. This is a side-by-side comparison of the 3 villages and the Manlius, the town outside of the village. That's the POV. And that gives a side-by-side comparison. I've got the assessed value in there, and I've got your taxable values in, just side-by-side comparison if you want to take a look at, see how that worked out. Questions?
Can you have a copy of the slide deck?
Really help with the breakdown, that's like that. But my question was related to what you said about fractional assessment. Can you explain what fractional assessment is? Because I heard the assumption that we treat, that there seems to be a basis for the algorithm around a neighborhood. And so does fractional assessment relate to that, where you can sort of have tiers of, you know, the 3 bedrooms, the 4 bedrooms, that doesn't relate to that?
No. Now, the fractional assessment is, again, it goes back to that equalization rate. It's a one number fits all. It's basically what would happen for all intents and purposes is I would stop making any changes to any of the assessments other than physical changes, whether there was new construction or demolition. And I rely on this guy for all that information. Misery loves company. Thanks, Tom. But if I didn't change the assessments, then the state would step in with the equalization rate and it would start determining what the full market value is of all of the properties based on one number. And that's what, I can go back and show
Right,
you
I
the what's.
understood the equalization rate. So it's interesting because I think what I understand from over the last 4 years is that people have the general sense that that's what we are doing. And so I don't think they understand the method that we use. So that's why it's been very helpful, I think, for you to give a presentation, for sure. And I understand that so many other municipalities and towns have not kept up with their assessments. But I understand also that point that was made, I think, I guess it was Craig who was saying that what about the situations where you have properties that are in a different school district that's actually part of a different town, and where you have basically other entities that are not following 100% every year.
And they wind up getting stuck with the equalization rate as well. Just to give you an example, drawing back on my first job as an assessor up in the town of Cicero, there was one street, Lawton Street. Cicero is now at 100%. And right across the street, you have the town of Clay, which is at about 3 or 4%. The state will come in and do an equalization rate, which would balance. So if you had two identical houses sitting across the street from each other, theoretically, the equalization rate would capture the true value of that property that's in the town of Clay. But again, it's a catch-all because you're still looking at one number that was being drawn from commercial properties and a number that was being drawn from farms, all coming into play.
Thank you.
That'll be interesting to see how it plays out with 3 or 4% assessment value of my property. The equalization rate will be pretty interesting to see how that
Is that it will be.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ben.
Thank you.
No, thank you. This was really great. It really helps educate. Okay, next up, we have the changes to the preliminary budget and final adoption of the vote.
For those of you that are looking at this process, the preliminary budget is what we shared with the public, it's on our website, and there's public hearing about it. After that public hearing, we take the info that we got from the public, plus some basically looking for errors in what we already did, and other information that may come in, and there are actually a number of changes that are attached to the agenda if you want to see the detail of them. What I would like to convey now is to make a proposal to the board to accept that there would be $499,575 addition to the A fund revenue and $499,575 additions to the A fund expenditures. So that's a wash. Likewise, in the DA fund, which is at the highway department, there would be a decrease of $37,573 in income and a decrease of $37,573 in the expenditure. In the DP fund, which is also in the highway department, there would be a decrease of $43,149 in revenue and a net change decrease of $149 in the expenditure. And then the final change is in the Sky Ridge Water District, where there's an increase of $4,760 in revenue and a net change increase of $4,760 in expenditure. So that is the proposal.
So we have it up there. It is on the agenda. It is more detailed in the presented. Just some of the highlights. We did receive grant award from Assemblyman Sturby for a number of different items for the police department, including some hybrid patrol vehicle and speed tracking equipment. So that is a big reason why you're seeing the big change to those funds, as well as a DASME grant for a cold storage shed at the highway garage to allow us to store the very expensive equipment over there undercover throughout the winter, and then also for the winter equipment throughout the summer, which is a great benefit. And again, those two together are a pretty significant change. And there's another number of other changes in there, but yeah, that's kind of the highlights of it.
So, are there any questions from the board? So I'd like to make a motion to adopt changes to the 2024 preliminary budget as presented.
And we're all, so it is an opportunity to just see them, and then know what they are, these are changes that will be.
They were emailed to us.
For them.
Yeah.
Just for purpose, instead of doing each of them individually, I think we can do them all.
No, that's it.
Second that.
Okay, so I would just ask, can we check if Councilor Creasel is on?
She was.
I'm here.
Okay, you have the ability to turn your camera on? So
I am
Councilor
in a taxi, so I don't think you can see me very well. Wait, hold on, here's a light.
So Councilor Creasel is traveling to a conference as her town councilor position, which allows her to join remotely and vote. So,
can see her.
yep. So with that motion, I would ask for all those in favor.
Second, I'm sorry.
So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay,
And I would like to announce
carries.
that is, the rate is $4.10 per thousand for people who live outside a village, and $3.22 per thousand for people who live in a village, which is a reduction for the town residents of 25 cents per thousand and a reduction of 16 cents per thousand for the village.
So for a motion to adopt the 2024 budget as amended.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the 2024 budget as amended.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye.
Shaven, you're in favor?
Yes, all those
Yes,
opposed?
yes, in favor.
All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have a 2024 budget, thank you. A lot of work went into that, especially with our new comptroller. We are very excited to be looking at updated software. We're about 15 years behind with updated budget software, so the process will very hopefully get easier, but also more easy to understand for the residents rather than these, massive reports. We're looking to hopefully have that be interactive on the website and make it so that it's much more digestible to understand where that money is going. Okay, with that, next up, we have a presentation on some updated information about the Garden Park Plan Unit Development. So yes, that's coming up.
I'm Chris Danaher. I'm an attorney in Syracuse. I'm also a town resident. So I'm going to speak briefly in two hats, as a town resident and more importantly, probably, and where I should be tonight as a lawyer. I live within a mile of this property. I know this property well. I run it, I walk it, and I hear what the residents near it are saying, but I also try to balance that with what can go there. And this development, it just has to take into account what's there. And I say that because you have the Wildwood Ridge Apartments across the street. You have a very unique site. You have the Wild Ridge Apartments across the street. You have Brookdale next to you. You have a steep slope behind you, essentially protecting the residential neighborhood above. So we're trying to balance a lot of different things and a lot of different concerns of both residents and this board. But that being said, I go back to what was last said in the open podium, which as a lawyer, this is zoned commercial. And what we're trying to do is downzone it. We're trying to make it less intense. And with that, you have to balance time and place. And I had this whole presentation, but I'm moving away from that because it's sat vacant for a long period of time. And time and place is very relevant. We can talk about all these other sites that are vacant in the town, but there's a reason they're vacant, and maybe that time and place will come. But right now, this time has come for this site. And it takes a balancing test, because we have the neighbors, we have Brookdale, a very important neighbor, that this doesn't happen, I don't believe, without their cooperation. I mean, we have a road that's not dedicated that requires their cooperation. And so we understand that, appreciate that. And we want to be a good neighbor to all the neighbors. But I have to say, it's not just an isolated neighborhood. This, as a resident, is a pass-through for me, from running, from driving, how I want to get to Manlius. Do I want to go 257? Do I want to go High Bridge? It depends on where I'm going in Manlius, living on this side of Manlius versus the village of Manlius. And I'm in the village of Fayetteville. So that being said, when we downsize it or downzone it, we're trying to create less traffic. I think from a commercial perspective to what we're trying to do with a PUD, 55 and older, the traffic, and I think what Heather said is you got to rely on studies, right? So we're going to professionals and asking them about traffic. And what they're telling us is this use is not going to generate a significant change in traffic, especially with the specific use we're trying to target 55 and older. And we believe that's very relevant. And then we also cohesiveness, trying to balance all these different uses. It's not just residential there. It's apartments right across the street, but right up the street, and again, Brookdale. And then you take into account the town did their own study. They did a cohesive plan, or comprehensive plan, comprehensive plan. And what's that called for? It calls for multifamily there. I mean, someone did a study and said this would be a good fit here, not us. And what we're trying to do is satisfy that need. So that being said, I understand the residents have concerns, and I think that this can be worked on. We'll work with the residents in the site plan process to try to address those concerns the best we can. I don't think we can address everything. It's not possible, but we can try to address those things. I thought it would be relevant though to just hear a few words. I'm not going to get into the changes. I think it's good that someone else does as to what we last presented, but quickly, I want to have Denise Root. She's the executive director of Brookdale. You've heard about from the other neighbors, and maybe you should hear from her about our project in relation to Brookdale. That's the first thing. The second thing is Shauna Thielen. She's the manager of the local Howard Hanna office. She can speak to the market. She can speak to the need for multifamily housing. And I know you guys know this, but it's good to hear. Reinforcement. Tom Douglas, he's the contract purchaser representative, just to highlight the changes and what we're trying to do to create that connectivity, that cohesiveness, and what we're trying to accomplish since the last plan, trying to hear the residents of this board. And finally, Anthony Rojas, he's the architect, and he can touch on specific design features if need be. I know it's more site plan, but if we need to, we can. And we're trying to keep it brief, but with that, maybe Denise can speak a few minutes, and then we could go to Shauna briefly, and then Tom.
Hi, hello again, Denise Root, executive director for Brookdale. I, as you know, am very, very excited about this project. We have families that are from, I need this on my. Thank you. We do have families that are from all over, some as far as north as Watertown, south, all over. And they're not all just families that are from, obviously, the Fayetteville, Manlius, Syracuse area. We are the #1 memory care community. We've been at 100% capacity. We have a waiting list. I'm proud to say that our first DOH survey, we were the first Brookdale in 8 years in New York State to have a deficiency-free survey. We're doing the right thing. And my families do need a place to stay because a lot of them are selling their homes in order to be able to put their loved one who has this tragic disease in a community, to have them socialize, to have them have programs and activities to keep their mind going, and to give them that sense of belonging. Because a lot of times when people have dementia or Alzheimer's, they withdraw, they isolate, they're in their homes by themselves. It's tragic, and by being in a place like Brookdale, you're with other people that are like you. And to watch them bloom and grow, people that you wouldn't think could do, is amazing. And I love what I do. But I do need housing because, as I said, some of these families have to sell their family home in order to be able to afford to put their family member in a place like ours. I know that I've had people that were looking for places to live closer by, and they're having a very difficult time with it. They can't buy another house. The housing market is unbelievable, and so is rent. So I do know that they've talked about having a couple apartments for my family members to stay in at a reduced rate. And it wouldn't be a yearly lease, which is something also because you never know. You don't know if your loved one is going to pass away. So they're going to lease it on a month-to-month basis. And it's going to help these people because I have 80-some-year-old people that want to be with their loved one every day. They've been married for years. They want to see their loved one every single day. And depending on the weather, they might not be able to. And when you're 80 years old and it's dark out at 5 o'clock and the weather gets bad, I think it would be so much more beneficial to have them to be able to be right there across the street. And not even across the street, it's just like, so Brookdale is very much for this and we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Shauna Thielen, and I manage the Howard Hanna Manlius and Casanova offices. But like Chris, I'm going to wear 2 hats. I came intending to speak to you about the demand and the real need for housing in Fayetteville. And I actually used the address that I grew up in, and it's 840 Oakwood Street. And if, I don't know where you put evidence, but there are currently, so this isn't micron, this isn't futuristic. Right now, Howard Hanna, we are the #1 real estate company in New York State. We have 57 people who are qualified and want to live in Fayetteville. And I want to tell all of you, I feel your pain. I got at least 6 panic calls today because of that I-81 announcement. Your homes are your value, and it's a tough job, everyone in this room. How do we have smart growth, right? And we have this need, and you spoke very well to the fact that we've got folks that want to live here, and what does that look like? And I'm going to use my family and that address because I grew up in FM. My brothers and I went away. We boomeranged and came back here, and we live here. And thank God my parents live in the Orchard. But there's not enough housing for the seniors who love going to the Y and they love this community. So when we speak to, are you addressing the current residents' needs by this? We really are, because they want to stay in this community and there's not a place where they're safe. They no longer want to take care of the yard. They don't want to worry about the snow plows. So I just want to say that I understand it's a big decision, but when you look at the best use, from a valuation standpoint, if you're across from a commercial property, that decreases the value of your home way more than a residential does. So I just wanted to bring some evidence and say that it isn't just talk, it isn't just maybe if Micron comes. Right now in this live moment, there's 57 people just with my company that want to live here. And I'm confident that if people had places to move, you know, those families had a place, I want to stay in Fayetteville, but I don't want to deal with the yard, it would make a positive impact on your current residents. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Start, there's been a lot of conversation tonight about taxes. And that's really how this project evolved, is our residents, our demographics for these senior apartments, these people already reside in Fayetteville and Manlius. And as Shauna just alluded to, they're not interested in home ownership. They really can't afford the taxes anymore. They don't want the maintenance, but they've lived here their whole life. And their only option really is to go downtown and rent an apartment. And some have tried that and they found downtown not to be so desirable. This is the highest and best use for this property. This property has sat vacant for 30 years. It's been an eyesore, and it's zoned commercial. We all know about that. The county refers to this as infill development. What they mean by that is they don't want you as a developer to go out in the county and take another farm down or vacant land. They want you to use the infill within our villages and towns where there's vacant land and there's infrastructure. What is infrastructure? Water, sewer, gas. We're not adding any capacity. It certainly will fit within the town standards, this project. And there's been a lot of conversation about the traffic and the size. I want, if you would, there's a couple maps and illustrations, if you would. The top one is a site plan, but I think the one below it is speaks to both the size and the scale and massing of this project. If you look at the aerial in this, our project really, massing wise, is not any larger than Brookdale. We're a 3.5-story building with the top floor being offset. So that floor is not really even visible from High Bridge. And my architects can speak more succinctly about the fact that High Bridge is a story above our first floor. So when you drive down High Bridge, you're not looking at this 4-story building as everyone's alluded to. You're seeing a 2.5-story building from High Bridge. The issue of traffic, there are no traffic concerns with this. These are seniors. Some will have one car, some may not have a car. I can assure you, these are luxury apartments. A good many of our residents that come from Manlius and Fayetteville won't be here in the winter. The building will probably, in all likelihood, be 50% vacant because a lot of those people are snowbirds. They're going to go to Florida. They don't bring crime. They don't bring depreciation. These are people who have lived here their whole life. And they want a nice place to rent. So when they want to go to Florida or they want to travel or they want to see their grandchildren, they can just turn the lights off and leave. They don't have to worry about who's going to plow the driveway or who's going to cut the lawn or who's going to take care of the taxes and so on and so on. The other issue, when we talk about taxes, this site doesn't generate any tax revenue for the town. This project will add for school and property taxes over $1 million in revenue to the town. And I don't think that should be ignored. I think it's a point that's worth noting. And then the board asked us, why a PUD? Well, why does this project need a PUD or meet the criteria for a PUD? What's unique about this property is the compatibility. Denise spoke very well to that we're a neighbor to Brookdale, and we're offering under the workforce affordability index apartments rather than making 4 or 5% of the units available to market rate, let's call it. We would rather have those available on a first come, first serve basis on a monthly, month to month for Brookdale residents, their family members, because they can walk across the parking lot on all hours of the day, 7 days a week. They don't have to move their cars. And that's invaluable. And if you look at the site plan, you'll note that we've made and identified a lot of the changes. And I'll just go real quick because I know people are here a long time. But if you look at the site development notes, we did land bank 32 parking spaces. The town asked us to do that. Of course, we're going to do a whole analysis with geotech. Kenny Geotech engineers will study these slope stability analysis for us. Connectivity. We will be the impetus of connecting High Bridge to the village. We've agreed to put sidewalks down to Dartmoor Crossing. I talked to John Deere, the town supervisor, the other day about the possibility of also going across High Bridge and connecting a sidewalk to Wildwood Ridge Apartments. And the whole thought is connectivity and access to the village. Our residents, they want to be near shopping. They need to be near North Met. They want to be close to the Y. So we're going to have a shuttle service with a bus stop that will transport those people to wherever they choose to go, which a shuttle as opposed to cars moving, you know, that's a plus to the town. We've also added a considerable amount of landscape screening. We talked to Denise, and we're working with her through the same landscape architectural firm, KFA, to design a comprehensive landscaping plan. So we're almost creating, in effect, a campus feel where we're going to have the residential component, and then they have the services. Because chances are some of our seniors may be going to this facility at some point. The other thing that we are studying too, and what makes it unique for a PUD, is there's two types of residential uses that we're looking at the feasibility and studying this component. And that is to take the 8 terrace units, the top units, the 4th floor, and making those condominiums. So you'll have ownership and you'll have a rental component to this. There'll be 78 rentals, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, and then 8 possibly set aside as ownership. And that'll be a card access with a private elevator to take those people. It's very common. You see it, I think the Hotel Syracuse, you see it a lot with properties where hotels will make the top 2 floors or the top floor ownership because those people can enjoy the amenities. And the amenities that we're offering, again, this is part of the PUD, and it's only available because I don't want to create any concerns about traffic. We're going to have a hair salon, but only those employees at Brookdale and our residents will be allowed to use that hair salon. Same with the spa, same with the wellness center. It's not open to the public, so we don't generate any traffic for anybody using those facilities. They will either be at Brookdale or they'll already reside at Garden Park. You know, when we talk about the traffic, I'm going back to the traffic because that's a big concern. When they did a traffic study on this project, at peak time, this is peak time, we add 11 cars to the road on High Bridge. It's insignificant. It has no impact on anybody's lifestyle or valuations of the property. And we are open-minded and we have listened. I had an idea 3 years ago, because I drove by this property for 20 years. I've lived in Fayetteville, raised my kids here, still live in Fayetteville, and I've looked at this property for 30 years. And all I had was a vision. And the vision was to make this a place where seniors could live and stay in the village of Fayetteville or Manlius in close proximity to their family. And it became a real blessing to have met Denise and realize that we could work with them and really enhance their operation. It's a first-class facility. Ours is a first-class project. We've tried to incorporate the visual, if you will, of Brookdale and surrounding. We've got a lot of natural stone on the building. And people say, well, it's a 4-story building, but you're looking at a 100-foot slope, barren slope behind it. It really kind of architecturally fits nicely up against that slope, because to me, I would rather look at a nice architecturally designed building where people reside than a barren hill that seems to be nothing more than a place where people dump their fill nowadays. I just don't see how that's appealing to anyone that lives on High Bridge. And then the other component to this is we talked a little bit about sustainability. We are going to have charging stations, and we are looking at using that top floor, the backside of the sloping terrace units for solar panels to accent or supplement the electricity coming into the building. So we're open-minded to meeting with the residents. I've listened to their concerns. I know there's some people that are impacted directly across from the egress in and out. We've added a right out only so that those, and I'm looking right at the map, Google, those lights will not hit a house. They'll be in between when they make that right-hand turn heading towards Route 92. We're willing to come in with some low growth screening, some arborvitaes perhaps, spruce, whatever is compatible with their landscaping. We will add that both on their property, so for offsite as well as on-site, and we'll line the High Bridge from our perspective to help with screening of the building and Brookdale to make this a more comprehensive plan with additional landscaping. So I think we've addressed everything that as far as changes go tonight. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, but I think that's all I have.
So where we're at right now, the plan will be to take on seeker at the December 6th meeting, and then possibly move on to the project. I do want to say I've had a lot of conversations with the developers, especially after that first public hearing. We listened to as much of those comments as we could, and I had the whole team here a couple different times where I told them, you heard the residents, you need to respond to that feedback. And I will say the fact that we've been able to kind of iterate on this, with the possibility of eventually connecting Wildwood, the new facility, Brookdale, all the way up to the village of Fayetteville with the sidewalk. It's aligning with our comprehensive plan goals. We're seeing something where we're seeing diversity of housing, rentals and condos, and some rentals that are helping local commercial business. And I just have to say that through this process, we've really worked back and forth with developers, and it was difficult at times when we said, hey, we need this address, we need this address. And there wasn't an immediate answer. There was conversations, there was consideration, and then something was brought back and presented to the board. To make it clear that when we have a project before us and we hear from the neighbors, we listen to that feedback and we try to do the best. Because again, the town board did not reach out to somebody and say, please build this project. A private developer came together and said, we would like to build this. So the town's responsibility is to make sure that it meets the goals of our comprehensive plan, and any of the impacts are addressed and pulled back as much as possible, while accentuating any of the benefits that we're going to see from this. And the fact that by having this development, we might see more connectivity with the sidewalk. That's a net positive to everybody. I've been driving up High Bridge after I dropped my 8-month-old off to daycare 3 days a week, and it is scary when people are walking on the road, walking on the side of the road. And so the fact that this project might allow us to make this a safer place, in addition to considering lowering the speed limit, in addition to, but the ability that we have to take something that seems scary to the local residents and to find ways to make it additive to the community, additive to local community as a whole, to address concerns and needs of other residents. I do want to thank the team for going back and forth with us quite a bit. Like I said, it was tense at times, but we were always able to find a way forward. And the commitments to screening for the neighbors, the right out to reduce those impacts. I just want to say there's a lot of conversation that doesn't happen in these meetings where you have your town board members advocating on behalf of the residents who are in the room that are telling us things to the developers, and the developers are working to respond to that. So I can understand this feels one-sided. I can understand if it feels that there is no consideration of the comments we're hearing, but I have to push back and say there are many hours of conversations and advocacy for everything we've heard in these public hearings at Open. So I look forward to yeah, go for it.
So I appreciate the modifications that you made. I think we did respond to the comments that we sent over. Except for the one thing that we have heard is the size. And I know there's a business model on how many units you need to make the thing work, but I'm wondering is if you could sharpen your pencil a little and look at how could you make the same concept smaller? Because it is large.
Sarah, that's a great question. And I want to thank John for his comments. We have had a lot of dialogue and we continue to listen, and we have yet to say no. We are more than willing to sit down with the neighbors and have neighborhood meetings, and through dialogue and discussion, you'll get to the right answer. We'll look at this, Sarah. The reason we need the density, in comparative terms with, I think it's Wildwood Ridge, I'm not really sure how many units that is.
Oh, it's much bigger.
Yeah, much bigger, right. We have underground parking, which is expensive to do. So we need the density to be able to offer the amenities and create a building. In my opinion, this will be a signature project for the village of Fayetteville for many years to come. And I think people will mimic this project because it's needed. We need places for our seniors to live. But in doing that, we need the density to be able to make this a signature project and have underground parking. We're parking nearly every apartment, at least one car underground. So when those people get out of their cars, there's no horns going off, there's no headlights, there's nothing. They're underneath the heated, secure.
There's no snow.
There's no snow. Yeah. And all that
But I
comes
just
with,
want to say.
I know, it all comes with a price tag.
Apartments, you only need 58.
Yeah.
Can I go? Yeah, we have questions about the-
Yeah, Tim.
What might be helpful is, and that's a good picture right there, and to Sarah's question. What's the footprint of Brookdale on that property? Versus what's the footprint of your building on that 5 acres? I don't know how big Brookdale is. Do you know how many acres you have? 5, so it's so it's similar size property, so it would be interesting to know what the footprint.
Yeah, Tim, that's a great question. What's interesting to know, if you will, is the sloping of this creates almost 2.5 to 3 acres of the property. Just the sloping of it. It doesn't appear to be that, but if you just look at the massing with Brookdale, we're really footprint wise, we're maybe not even as large a facility as.
Can somebody get us that number?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, and maybe Anthony can speak to that. I can't speak to Brookdale, but we can try to do some calculations and answer that question.
I can figure it out.
Yeah.
Dark green is trees, it's not grass.
Yeah, it's not an open podium or public hearing. Please speak regardless of yourself.
You can always follow up by emailing, and it's not that we're not taking comments, it's just that the forum for speaking back and forth with residents is open podium or public hearing. Can I just ask, about what Mr. Downey suggested about site work mode, when you're actually working on this? I thought that was a really relevant and important point about being, having a game plan and having to adjust the game plan as you get on the site and understand this is down the line, but I'll say it now in the spirit of working with the neighbors. Having that articulated, understood, and as things change, updating the neighbors would be another way to show that this is how a first class project actually, gets done.
Yeah, and that's, again, a great question. It's essentially one phase. Because you can't build half the building and then build the rest of the building. So the staging will occur in the back portion, away from the neighbors, quite a bit of distance from High Bridge. But it'll be essentially a one-phase project. And the two companies, they're both large, Huber Brewer being one, and Parsons McKenna, they're both local companies that do a lot of business. We expect the build out to be about 14 to 18 months from start to finish. And that depends on the seasonality as to when we start. Obviously, we start in the spring, we get it under roof, then we work right through the winter. And those are all just winter conditions and variables that, go into a project like this. But yeah, we could do a construction model for that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And also, I just want to say it's amazing to see the collaboration. If we could see more developers come in with this idea of building a relationship already with their neighbor businesses and being able to talk about needs like that, I mean, we could see that happen.
Well,
you know, it's interesting to know too, and I know there's been a lot of conversation about headlights, especially the residents where you come right out of the road, egress in and out of our building. But we're seniors. Most of our seniors in the summer especially are going to bed. They're not coming out at 11 o'clock. They don't come home at midnight. They don't work the third shift. And so we don't have a lot of traffic generation at night for those people that, you know, are affected by headlights. But we can help the street. That's something we can absolutely do.
Any other comments from the board? I know you had one more person say to speak. I just want to.
Yeah, his phone was dying.
Understanding the time.
Yeah.
Any more comments or questions from the board? And we'll kind of pick this back up on the 6th. Thank you very much. Okay, so next up, we have the local law amending arts and zoning for cannabis and the definitions section of the town code. I believe that this public hearing open. So I would just ask if anyone is here to speak at this public hearing. Audience, joining us.
From
We have those recommendations.
Okay, could I, ask questions about that?
If we could just, folks, we're, you know, have a business meeting, just keep the discussion amongst yourselves. Very quiet, if you'd like to step down the hall or step outside. So yeah. Okay.
I was talking to someone who is interested in a dispensary, and I don't think, and I think what we really have in this space, a quick update with where our laws are for the villages and the towns, where our allowances are already, and then where the state is with things. Because one of the things that I know is at the town, we have allowed both on-site consumption and dispensaries, retail sales. The village of Fayetteville sales. The village of Manlius has opted out of allowing retail sales or on-site consumption. And I don't remember the village of Manlius. They voted also for nothing like the village of Manlius.
Well, no. The
Village of Manlius.
Manlius.
Oh, they didn't vote. They just, okay, got it. So, but I also know that there are commercial properties like Town Center that some of their occupants, their at least properties have their own rules about distances to certain kinds of businesses. So Target has some sort of law, so the feasibility of, you know, being with quarantine to the town center might be affected. I think they mentioned another company like Hobby Lobby, something like that. So that's a new piece of information. And also, I know Councilor Nicholson has delved into their state law. And I don't think people understand that we're in this space where we're looking at roller showcases now because of where the state law implementation is. And also the town needs to keep understanding what happens next in general. So that's what I wanted to.
Yeah, I can absolutely like since I would, I mean, this for things changing definition, food, and retail, what we're talking about. The second thing, in the RT zone, I mean, the RT zone exists for a reason. There was a rational purpose for it at the time, and our residential. What concerns me reading New York State cannabis law is that there seems to be a very strong position on limiting the to impose the woman to the time, manner, and location of these operations. And so we need to discuss that, we need to figure that out. Because the grower showcases to perform a useful task for the aspiring merchants in this industry space, and that's a good thing. But after that, what will we have? And what are our municipal rulemaking authorities to, you know, and I must say, just as a, in principle, I'm for it. I'm for the industry, it's a good thing, it's an innovation for our commercial space for sure. But what made this option palatable for most Americans, most New Yorkers, is the argument that it would be regulated like liquor stores. It's not a radical departure from what we do now. It's not a radical departure from various commercial activities that we regulate in town. So in reading the New York State position on how we're gonna legislate cannabis retail, and that's up right now. It does give me more concern, we will not be able to exercise that right.
So under the changes to RT.
No, just in
Just in
general.
general,
It's not.
it's not. Municipalities shall not impose limitations on hours of operation, let's say. Unless at this point, this is a very nascent industry, so at this point, the language is unless the licensee agrees to it. That's great. The next licensee, you know.
Trying to get
These
into
are,
it.
these are temporary,
Yes.
so.
I think in general, that was the goal, was to make a definition of retail, including cannabis, with no further restrictions on permanent places. And, you know, the temporary operating permit, is really more of a way for us to respond somewhat quickly to a change, to the cannabis office. And understanding that there's particulars like this particular zone RT, that, you know, there are folks interested in a long-term building there, that it seems the simplest way, without imposing the restrictions, is we're not really allowed to do. Really the goal here is, you know, we do have the authority of zoning, so we can say where it can happen within town. And I don't look at special operating permit as a restriction, it is a further allowance to say, in a zone that would not normally allow for this, we are allowing for temporary uses of it. And understanding, qualifying that with the fact that there are 4 parcels that are zoned RT. The intent was to remove them and essentially add retail as a component to those spaces. And that this is, you know, one of those times where, with the speed at which things happen, you know, I think if we had known earlier about the grower showcases, if we knew there was interest, there might be a different solution that we might have looked for. But in the short term, what this does is it's a very small change, to a very small area of the town, to allow for, you know, 90 days a year of this grower showcase, while also, you know, and this is why I think it makes sense doing it together, to update our zoning to say, anywhere you can do retail as per this definition, that's gonna be allowable for cannabis. So, you know, when I look at this, I see this as us responding to the state saying, you can't put restrictions on time, place, and manner. And so what we are up to is determine zoning. And so what we're doing is solving the long-term problem by saying this zoning, this retail, anything that allows the retail, you know, understanding too, RM has certain restrictions on retail. And I believe that's okay. So what we're doing is we're essentially saying, long-term, this is the solution for where cannabis can operate, that we are allowed to do. And then the short term, it's not really a restriction we're placing on it, it is a further allowance, especially one that will allow us, the municipality, the police department, code enforcement office, to understand how this new type of business operates, and essentially have an on ramp to understand, are there major traffic concerns, are there major security concerns, you know, are there all of the things that we are worried about. This is actually an opportunity to explore those issues prior to a permanent building going in place, which if this particular location would need that, would go down that route to a different zone, that would also come back before us, and we would be smarter for having seen what a temporary facility or temporary ability to sell looks like, and we'd be able to learn from that. That might inform how we take on that zone change. And I know we have a couple other people that are looking it down, and that's where I see this as a fact-finding mission, as well as reminding ourselves that, you know, if this operates for 90 days, the revenue that comes in is not currently budgeted, which means we would be able to put that towards solving the problems that arise as part of this. Or actually giving ourselves an opportunity to kind of look into the future, understand the concerns, and be better prepared in the future for bigger decisions like, should this space be allowed to have retail, for instance? Well, no. They would have a temporary ability, but after they use, if each parcel will use their 90 days.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah.
And if that were to be permanent, that would require a zone change.
Yeah.
Which would bring it right back to the process that we do, sending it to recommendations, you know, doing the secret process again, allowing us, reassess.
I don't want to complicate this process, but is there a way for us to either follow up with, if not now, at this moment, a memo or commitment to spend revenues that come in for the purpose of making sure we're understanding how to really, take in the industry, food wise, do everything. I think we should do that.
I don't know how we do something like that, but that sounds, as far as I was concerned, that was the intention of that additional revenue.
Yeah, but I think it would be, I want a model that we're actively committed, and I want to be clear, make a commitment to the community that we're actually looking at this. We can figure out the numbers, but I think that we're actually trying to not just get the money from the process, and understand what the impacts are.
Yes, I agree. Are we
So the purpose of this local law, you're going to well, we do that. We clarify.
So I'll make motions to put town make town committees move agency RT's on.
Just call out for Caitlin, if you're still with us, please turn your camera on. She's done, okay. So all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And as Supervisor already explained, this is going to be sort of a temporary 30-day, less than 30-day showcase opportunities in the town, really in limited parcels, ones actually. So based on that very limited allowance for this type of retail, we'll go through the questions. So we'll propose local law, reading material conflict, and then adopt the land use plan or zoning regulation. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of the land? That's so
Small.
small. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? That remains to be seen. We will have an opportunity to do that.
And the code sponsor will have to issue those permits, so if we do see significant adverse effects, there is a safe mechanism to also so to address this.
Those it's not, because again, it's separate. Will it affect the CEA, people learning now, the proposed action resulting in adverse change in existing level of traffic will also affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, like in walkways, those small. Proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and fails to incorporate reasonably available energy conservation methods, those small. Proposed action, impact the public water or public sewer, those small. The proposed action for the character, quality, and important historical or architectural sites, resources. Proposed action result in an adverse change to natural resources such as wetlands, water bodies, and water. Small. Proposed action result in an increase in potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems. Small. And will proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources. So based on those 11 questions, we know a small impact from changes in local law. So I would recommend amending that operational procedure.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
So now you are free to consider the local law that has been presented to you. Change that we made the last meeting to reflect things like how many operating permits you can get and anyone you need. Just do that down. The incentiveness of the
Is this local law 2023-13?
Yes.
That's number. I'd like to make a motion to adopt local law 2023-13, amending the residential transitional zoning classification as presented in the resolution prepared by the agenda for the town.
I will second it with the comment that we are taking a chance here. And I personally taking a chance here. This property is 5 feet from my front door. So, let's try it.
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And that goes for.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to a public hearing that was scheduled quite a while ago for an unsafe building located at 6602 Fremont Road. Did you want to talk to us about anything?
I can, I don't believe that it's gonna show up. Did you, Allison, do you have access to my report?
You could just give us a brief update.
So like,
Tom, do you want the microphone? Thank you.
So a building permit was pulled for the re-roofing of the structure. I had informed the contractor and the property maintenance company that did not remove the unsafe structure, as the structural integrity of the building was not repaired. On, I believe, October 26th, I received a report that did not satisfy what I would have used for the issuance of a permit for trying to repair the structure. It essentially was a third-party inspection saying that the portions of the home that we knew needed to be repaired, in fact, did need to be repaired. And I have not received any other communication since that. I spoke with him stating that he should reach out to either a engineering firm or an architectural firm that would be able to assist him with providing the documents for the repair of the structure. But now, as you can see, with the roof repaired, the front of the house has fallen off. And now there is a hole into that.
So what is the step that happens at this?
What is the next step?
Well, I think it's just a public hearing.
Yeah, we're holding a public hearing to see if the opportunity to the owner of the property to explain why we wouldn't issue an order. Basically, take the building down and let's do it. I hold during one more meeting and then contact the owner.
Because they have just paid to put in the roof.
Correct.
Yeah, so presumably they don't want to do that.
So.
I would hope that we can resolve this with just obtaining the proper documents, and once that has happened, the person who, essentially the portfolio holder who has this within the bank would, once they obtain those documents, would then move forward with correcting it before winter happens and it becomes a more serious issue.
I mean, my question is, how could a roofing company take that money, go so far as to not just look at it and then build a quote or whatever?
Well, they did put a new roof on it, but everything you see there is temporary.
How could that,
It's not structurally sound,
how could
in
they
my
have done
opinion.
that? Did they did, so it's not unusual that a roofing company would do that?
To re-roof
A structure that looks, that they could probably tell was not in good shape, or?
This is not an ordinary situation,
Tom,
so.
do this, just go like this.
Thank you.
Go like that. Did you get it? No, there was a bug on your.
Oh, thank you. I was like, what are you? Is that a hair or something?
Okay, so today, thank you for your presentation. We didn't have anybody for the public.
Oh, we go.
Just hold it open.
Yeah.
So yes, we can get in contact with them, and I will have prepared for the next meeting order. If we want to take this out, I want to make sure we get across all our needs.
So, for a motion to leave.
Make a motion to waive reading notice of the public hearing regarding unsafe building 6602.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then I would need a motion to open.
Public hearing.
Favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Is there anyone here who would like to make a comment at this public hearing?
Just in answer to your concerns, water.
Come on up.
Certainly. My name is Bill Lejour. I live in Fremont on Kendall Drive. Water destroys buildings faster than just about anything you can name. And if you plan to maintain a building for a time before you can improve it, the roof is the first thing you're gonna have to do.
That makes sense.
So.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else here to make a comment? Anyone online? So raise hand function. Okay, with that, we will hold this public hearing open until December 6th. Consider the notice of orders. So. If, Councilor Zion, on a second. Yes.
So I'd like to jump ahead to number 13 on the agenda and make a motion to authorize the supervisor to sign the Civic Plus annual renewal contract for the town of Lexington.
I'd like to second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Aye, motion carried. I will say, it is amazing the amount of value we get out of such a small, relatively small payment. But when we consider the amount of things that our Civic Plus website does, it's some of the best money. Easy pages alone. Yeah, some of the best money we're spending.
Backwards on number 12. I'd like to make a motion to authorize, it is written, we received a letter from our engineering firm and 2 proposals for a survey on the Murphy area. So I'd like to make a motion to authorize CMI land surveying to provide survey services for the Murphy drainage basin at a rate of $2,800, which is anticipated to a.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Motion carries.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna do secret for the highway storage, called storage shed garage. So if you want to do the secret again.
Yes. So is everybody going to make a motion to declare ourselves free?
So I have to make a motion to declare ourselves free agency regarding the cold storage shed at highway garage.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
And just so everybody understands what we're dealing with, this is a 60 by 80 foot storage shed. A pole barn, 16 feet high, which will have electricity and will have a gravel floor. So it's already it's at the property we call it the highway garage, sitting near the highway garage, but it's already. So let's keep that in mind when we're going through the short and environmental assessment form. Answer some questions. Number 1, we'll close action.
Before we do that, because I would answer differently, but I didn't know. A weird leak in a vehicle, something else like that, how is that regulated already? So for vehicles that are already in the highway garage world, how do we regulate?
Just as a reminder, this is a roof to sit over equipment that is currently sitting outside. So,
That's already
yeah, so basically, all we're doing is putting the roof over the equipment and collecting those.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's something that's already done. Yeah, this is something. Yeah.
Okay, well, the closed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation. The proposed action results in a change or use in the intensity of the land. The proposed action impair the character quality of the existing community. The proposed action impacts critical environmental area. The proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic. The proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonable level of energy conservation. Will impact public water or public sewer. Will it impair the character quality of the historic archaeological or architectural aesthetic resource? Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in wetland water body, so on and so forth? No. Will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? And will the proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? So, based on the answers to those questions, I would recommend this declaration.
We should recommend declaration outlining the period by period.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, carries. So,
just have, so there was a resolution prepared, we'll just be. Send it to the.
Yeah, so we have a few people when it's ready, if you can send it to the next. Resolution to declare ourselves lead agency and then we should make some changes.
just as a reminder too, this is project is in the 2024 budget. It's just- Next up, we have the community solar program, Solar Simplified. So we had a presentation last time. It was the company on behalf of Abundant Solar, the developer, or the company that put in the solar project on the landfill. This agreement authorizes community solar to essentially use the town's letterhead and branding and name to market the kilowatts that are produced by this solar installation to strictly town of Manlius residents first and foremost. And then for every sign up, the town will receive, for every resident sign up, it's about $50. It is $50 per residence, and they are estimating about 700 signups. So it's a pretty good chunk of change. And then this is satisfying the need to prioritize town of Manlius residents to get first access to the power generated by that facility. Also, it allowed the town to sign up as a member of that and receive a roughly 10% discount on our power. So any other questions for discussion, anything like that?
We shared with them our interest in being creative about getting the word out and putting an ad in the Eagle Bulletin. Maybe we can ask them to do the visual part of that too, like the visual ads they run. In addition to the mailing, who is providing them with the mailing information?
So my understanding is they have it. If not, I would assume they'll reach out to the assessor's office.
Will they get it from National Grid or the assessor's
I
office?
mean, National Grid probably seems the most reasonable because they want to send it to everybody who has an account within the town mailings.
Yeah, and so I think we asked them to show it to us before it goes out, and we want to make sure that it's branded so that people know it's an officially endorsed thing from the town and not just a random marketing opportunity for them to consider. So, and you're talking to them. Yeah, I'll reiterate.
We had that conversation when they presented last time. It seemed very amenable to all the things we're asking for.
So, yeah, I think we can provide them that information to the Eagle Bulletin colleague that we have there with that part. And I'll send an email and ask that to John to pass on to them. Okay? And ask them to confirm what addresses they're using and where they want them. And that we would be happy to, help them with language or want to see how they're designing piece of it. Anything else?
I think we don't want to just go moving. We want to approve and want to try to.
Yeah, and that's, okay, yeah, I'll be clear about that.
maybe possibly see if we can get some mail letters out a little earlier so people are ready for this possible.
Yeah, if they can do that so that they get a head start.
They should have a problem, as long as they don't have like, restriction or policy that they can't do that, I don't think there's an issue at all. I think it's great to prioritize that general area first, maybe have them do that in 1 week and then the rest of them. We'll include that over to them in the email, so have you send over that email, and then I will follow up with the writing materials that required, so I will look for a motion.
I'll just make a motion to, sorry, looking at my documents. Motion to enter into a municipality services agreement with Solar Simplified for a 12-month period for marketing services related to resident participation for the community solar program related to the Bowman Road Solar Project, and authorize the supervisor to sign the agreement.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So, move along, to the supervisor's report for.
Supervisor's report for October 2023. I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we control the minutes, for the special meeting on, October 30th, 2023.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from October 30th, 2023.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 1st.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We have abstract number 22.
To ask the supervisor to answer number 22 at $340,522.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. I know we have something at the end, and we will have to go into executive session, for.
So I think this opportunity to recognize Governor Shami for Thanksgiving greeting. Today we have gathered as we see the cycle of life continue. We've been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now we bring our minds together as one, and we give duties and thanks to each other as people. We are all thankful to our mother, the earth, as she gives us all we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk upon her. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us, and she knows her reading return. To our mother, we send greetings and thanks. To all of you, we send greetings and thanks, and wish you all the very best.
So with that, is there anything else we wanted to cover, any business, any comments? So with that, I would look for a motion to enter into executive session, for. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Where is that? That's roller.
Let's just keep that open.
Okay, so we are out of executive session. On conversation, I am looking for a motion to authorize me to sign the tentative agreement with the PBA for the 2024 agreement.
So moved.
24, 25, 26.
I'll second
Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Moving forward, we need to, as the town board, perform two budget amendments to bring in revenue to the 2023 budget to fund the hazard pay that was agreed with the PBA, as well as amend the personal services line within the police department to allow for that payout to happen. So first motion, I'll make it, I think this is my first motion, Supervisor. Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to amend the 2023 budget, line A00.4.4089, the ARPA funds line, to increase it by $100,000. Those in favor? Aye.
Just the
Opposed?
point that Ezra Page is one of the authorized
Yes.
purposes.
Opposed? Motion carries. So now at the revenue side, Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to amend the 2023 budget. Line is A00.5.3120.100, the police personal services line, and increase it by $100,000. Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Anything else? Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.